So what are and I know you've got some clips kind of queued up for us. What are kind of the differences between just going out and playing like gym class football or like traditional skelly and the actual like game of 7-on-7? Because I think that's the next question coaches are going to have. They buy into it. We're good. We want to do it. What do the coaches need to know to effectively run 7-on-7?
So basically, as far as gameplay goes, it's a condensed field. So it's a 40-yard field. So it's basically broken up into like 3 chunks from an offensive perspective. So you start with the ball, at the 40, and then you get 3 downs to get 15 yards, and then you get a first down. And then you get 3 downs for the next 15, and then 3 downs inside the 10 to score. So you don't need a lot of space too, which is the nice thing is, if you have a program that, if you're fortunate to have large numbers, you can actually get 2 games going simultaneously in the other directions on your field and run it properly. The way it's structured is, in American rules, there's 5 eligible receivers and then your quarterback. So it's technically 7-on-6 because you have 7 defenders, 5 receivers or running backs, tight ends, however you want to line it up in a quarterback. And the quarterback has 4 seconds to throw the ball. So most tournaments have a T. So basically the T is triggered with a timer that beeps after 4 seconds. So as soon as the ball gets picked up off the T, it counts 4 seconds. And if the quarterback hasn't released the ball, it's considered a sack, loss of down. Some of them, if they don't have a T, then one of your offensive subs just takes a knee and snaps the ball to the quarterback. Or you can go at a shotgun or under center. So the quarterback can pick the ball up directly off the tee himself, or you can have someone snap it off the tee. So from an offensive perspective, if you want to work under center drops versus shotgun, no drop, like you have the ability to do all of those things how you want it. So in a tournament, the rules are kind of set, but if you're just doing it with your own individual program, you can kind of set it up however you want. And essentially you can use your whole playbook. And, one of the things that we talked about with the Canadian Association is, whether or not we adapt from American rules to Canadian rules. It's easily done where, you can just add the extra eligible receiver and add an extra defender. So you can have your 6 eligibles, you can have your 8 defenders like you would in a Skelly. Like it's not hard to do that. And you just use, whatever playbook you're using. And, the game just kind of progresses from there. It's a 25-minute game and the clock doesn't stop unless there's a serious injury. So everything happens quick and, it forces you to, as the quarterback, make quick decisions, read, react, and pushes the tempo for your offense if you want to. Obviously, if you're winning, you can slow down the tempo because there's a 20-second play clock. So essentially, when they spot the ball, you have 20 seconds from when they spot it to snap it for the next play. Because obviously, in a runtime game, if you're the defense and you want the ball back and the offense is taking like 45 seconds to snap the ball, they could essentially just run the clock out. So that's kind of the main rules. And then all the game rules are the same. Offsides is a 5-yard penalty for offense or defense. They call pass interference, holding. The rules of the game don't change. The only difference is you're not in pads and it's only, your offensive skill guys versus your defensive skill guys. And they have it set up, essentially most of the time there's 2 refs, 3 refs on the field. And, it at most tournaments, it's run pretty efficiently and you don't need a lot. Like really, you just need a football, right? And that's the good thing about it too, is you don't need equipment. So if you want to start up your own program or, right now in COVID where you can't have pads, well, you don't need it. Right. So, from a cost standpoint for people who want to start up a club 7-on-7 team, you don't buy shoulder pads, you don't buy helmets, you don't have to buy any of that stuff. You literally just need a football. And, at your high school, if depending on what happens when you go back in the fall, if they're, hesitant to allow you to go in pads and contact, depending on the rules are, well, I don't think anyone would object to you doing 7-on-7 because there's no contact, there's no pads, there's no, hitting. So it should be, something that you can do. And like you said about, numbers, essentially you can have under 25 people and run a game, which I think is like the benchmark for having 25 people on the field in July. If you're looking at 5 offensive players and a quarterback and you have a couple subs, you can have, 8 or 9 guys aside and have 18 guys, So, it's something that I think is going to benefit you right now where there's very little that you can do. And then, use it as a tool however you want moving forward. But, all of the guys that we have in our program, they keep coming back because of, they see the value in it. Number one, we take them and they compete against better players. But, some of these guys, if you're a receiver and, your offensive system is heavy run, they don't get a lot of opportunities to run routes and catch balls. And, they don't get the chance to work on their skills. The quarterback, you don't get to go to many places where you're going to throw like 200 balls in a weekend. And the only thing you're going to do is pass. So, there's no way you're not leaving a session without getting better, because all you're doing is reading it and throwing and running routes and covering. So, the benefits are endless, and it's probably the easiest thing you can set up because you don't even need flags, right? It's literally one hand touch is how the games are set up. So it's about the easiest thing you can do as far as football running any type of event.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's, again, like you brought up the value for high school teams. And I think with high school teams, it's always hard because it's all about investment and what you get, right? Like coaches already in high school are working crazy hard just to keep the machine running, right? And so they're, always looking for ways that they can do things more efficiently. And I think that even to the point where like, hey, if you did this in the spring, your players could run this in the summer. Like obviously your players can go throw a ball on a football field anytime. But if you've given them the structure, like, hey, this is how big the field is. These are the rules, right? These are the plays we want you to run. Here's the playbook. Like run these plays, and like not talking about in a COVID summer where everything's getting going for the first time, but just like sustainably, throughout, the next 10 years of improving the game. I think it's a no-brainer for high school teams that are trying to find an advantage and something that can help them continue to develop the pass game. And I think that's huge. One thing I was just thinking about in my own head is, so what are the field dimensions if you play like the American rules? I'm putting you on the spot here. It's a tough one, but
yeah. So basically like the easiest way to envision it based on the Canadian field is from one sideline to the numbers on the other side. So you basically, from the numbers to the opposite sideline is kind of like the out of bounds line is the easiest way to kind of envision how big the field is. And then again, it's a 40-yard length and they only have 10-yard end zones. So if you have a field that has lines, like if you're fortunate to have a turf field, what we do when we practice is we basically have our gameplay field start at the 50. And then the goal line is the 10-yard line, and the back of the end zone is the actual goal line on the field. So you don't run into the goalpost, and then we block off the numbers to the other sideline with cones so they can kind of see how it is. But if you decide you just want to adapt it to the Canadian rules, because obviously when you're playing high school, if you're a high school coach and you want to think about doing it and you're not going to go play in the States, you can just add your extra receiver and DB and just use the full field, which is something that, it's kind of up to you how you would want to do it. Like we are going to, we are trying to host a tournament in May, and we did have some high school teams that signed up and wanted to be a part of it, which, our association, because all of our teams that are in the association travel to the States, we are using the American size field. So we will shrink it down and have, kind of the one less player. And then the other big thing too is with American rules, like from an offensive perspective, you don't get, the waggle down to the line of scrimmage from your receivers. Like everyone has to be stationary when the ball snapped. And then also from a defensive perspective, you don't have to be a yard off the ball. You can literally be right there for press coverage. But when you're doing your own thing, you can kind of decide what you want to do with it. We always do American rules only because we want to get our guys accustomed to when we go to the tournaments and we actually travel. And one of the things that some tournaments in the States, they actually do allow you to run the football. So you can line up with a running back in the backfield and, your quarterback can work an RPO. You can hand the ball off to him. You can fake the ball and then you can pass it. So they all kind of have different rules that allow you to do different things. So from that perspective, it does kind of add an extra element that you can work with your offense. If you have that in your system where you like to run, the RPOs or run read option and, have your quarterback. The quarterback can't run, but you can hand the ball off to a running back. And, those are things that you can kind of adjust to whatever your offensive system is or whatever you want. Some tournaments, the defense, you're allowed 1 or 2 blitzes a game. So essentially you can rush the quarterback and, touch him for a sack instead of having to cover for 4 seconds, which, is pretty tough to do. If you're a defensive coach, you can probably, vouch for that. It's, watching your guys try and cover someone for 4 seconds with no pass rush is pretty tough. Yeah. So all of those things you can kind of work in the wrinkles of what you want to do. Most of the rules in the tournaments are mostly the same, but it's those little variations that are, kind of different. So if you want to try doing the American rules, basically from the numbers to the sideline is out of bounds. So you can just, line up cones where the numbers are and then block that off, and then only 10-yard end zones. Or you can just go full Canadian rules and
yeah, we actually last summer in Cambridge, because we had our JVs and our senior guys together, the skill guys. We shrunk the field. We did some full field skelly, and then we did some where we played with the same number of players, but on a slightly smaller field because we had some like JV quarterbacks. And it actually, without the O-line, like obviously the spacing is a little bit different and everything, but it was an effective way too, just to let more people have the arm strength to make throws, right? Like we all know that field corner can be pretty quiet, and having that smaller field, again, it's a development tool, right? It doesn't need to be the exact same as the Canadian game. I think there's even something to be said for, hey, if you're looking to just learn the playbook, maybe take the waggle out of it, right? Teach the